Hi there, everyone, especially Kevin, and welcome back to my sixth podcast. For those who don't know, this is a podcast that I do as a reflection piece of the classes that we run in drama and education, where I try to reflect upon what we learned in class today and apply it to education through theater and drama. Today, I'm going to be talking about antitheses and the idea of where we pull from in stories and how the change of even just one word can create different stories and how our perspective of stories can create different stories. So today in class we were talking about how in Romeo and Juliet, if you change just one word, it creates an entire different story with entire different meaning for entire different reasons. And how that is in every story. If you changed one word in The Hobbit, it would change the story. In Narnia, it would change the story. And that's with every tale. And how our perspective of these stories is really what gives them their power. This idea is really interesting to me, and it's something I want to explore with more. As someone who's not a huge into Shakespeare myself, doing this activity was really quite eye-opening to see how important words are, which sounds silly, but how important words are when you're reading. How important what specific words we're using are. It's not necessarily about efficiency, but it's about clarity. What is the way that we can tell the most clear story? And what words can we use to best equivoate that kind of ending? Uh, and the the comparison that was made was in Romeo and Juliet, when she is giving the monologue at the end of her life about stabbing herself in the chest. She leaves it to rest, or in other versions, she leaves it to rust. And we were divided into two separate groups, and we were told to basically sell Kevin, our teacher, on which was correct. And I was on rust. And honestly, my group came up with so many points that I agreed, and that I thought that it should be rust. But I realized at the end of the activity that the idea was not the argument. The idea was to see where our attention went, where our perspective went, and why we were able to defend those perspectives, either though either could be true. Um, and how our perspective on the words used and the words themselves that are used are very important in on the stories we tell and the stories that we read. Now, this is quite easy to apply to education. Kids need to be able to have clarity in speech, to be able to understand and create their own stories. However, it's also important to allow them to be able to find their own clarity in speech so that they can create their own speaking levels. We don't want to force kids to have to follow old and unnecessary written and speaking ideas. Simply act as a guide to be able to allow them to make their own decisions on how they wish to speak and why they wish to speak that way. And ultimately, they will provide their own perspective to these stories, and when they read them, they will get their own perspective from them. And this is really the highlight of that idea. So this lesson was really an interesting one for me to learn, and it's one that I'm excited to get to explore with more in the future. Of what does it mean if you change just that one word? How does that shift the story? And can you still get to the end of the story if you shift that one word, or does that ultimately change it? And I think just playing around with that idea of literacy and grammar inside of stories would be really interesting activity for kids to be able to work around with, to see if they did change those things, or if you as the teacher changed those things, would they be able to write an ending to that new story or that new version of the story, or how would that shift? And it's something that I think I'm going to do with my kids, and I really look forward to practicing how these stories shift, and really showing why the words we use have meaning, and why our own perspectives have meaning to the stories we're reading, because the stories that we read are decided by the perspectives that we've lived. There is no art that is taken from nothing. All art is taken from something, some inspiration from somewhere in life. And that's why we're able to connect to all art. I don't think I'm a firm believer that there is no single piece of art that does not contain a single aspect in it that every human can connect to in some way, whether abstract or direct. So I think that the idea that our ability to connect to material is based off of the lives we've lived is very true. And it's very true when you start to change things in stories and have the kids finish the stories themselves, um, make assumptions about what's happening, why the characters are saying this instead, why the characters should say this instead, why that makes more sense to them. Just little things like this is just a really good activity to expand upon uh, and broaden our perspective of writing and reading and storytelling itself. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it for this week. Thank you very much for listening, guys. I'm sorry if it sounded a little mucky. I do have the flu this week, so I am mucky. But I really appreciate y'all listening in. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. And thank you very much. All right. Have a great night. Have a great night, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.